Voters took a big step today toward choosing the next president of the United States, casting ballots in primaries and caucuses in 16 states. And as those ballots are counted, it's looking like a very good night indeed for Texas Governor George W. Bush. Joining me now from the governor's mansion in Austin is the governor of Texas, George W. Bush, and his wife, the First Lady of the Lone Star State, Laura Bush. Thank you both for being with us.
Dan,
Governor,
thank you very much, sir.
Congratulations on a tremendous night by anybody's measurement.
Well, we're excited and thrilled. I appreciate so very much all the folks across the country that heard my message of improving schools and strengthening the military, and a message of economic growth by sharing some of the surplus with the taxpayers.
Governor, polls show that John McCain beats Al Gore in the general election. They show that you aren't. Is the party nominating the wrong guy?
I don't think so. I think the party's picked the right person. I think one of the interesting parts of this campaign, Dan, is the fact that we have excited many Republicans who haven't been involved in the process over the past couple of cycles. In other words, there's a big turnout going on. People are enthused and excited about my message of reform and renewal. I've got a lot of work to do, I recognize, but step one in politics, as you know, is to unite the party and unite the philosophy, and then go out and find voters who are tired of Washington, D.C. I intend to do that.
Governor, would you offer the vice presidential slot to John McCain?
Well, you know, John is still a viable candidate. He's run a good campaign. I think there's an old political trick to try to diminish an opponent by talking in terms of the vice presidency. Now's not the time to do that. There are still primaries ahead. As you know, my own state of Texas, or our own state of Texas, is going to vote a week from today. And tonight's a night of victory and congratulations for people who've helped me. But I'm going to keep campaigning.
Several people in Texas have told me, Governor, that they expect you to ask General Colin Powell to run with you. Any truth to that?
Well, he's a fine man, but there's no truth to that either. I haven't even started preparing a list because my mind is still in the primaries. I haven't got enough delegates to secure the nomination yet. Tonight is a big step toward there, but I've got a lot of work, Dan. I'm going to continue talking about issues that matter, issues that not only matter in the primary, that'll make a huge difference in the lives of people should I become the president. And the foremost domestic issue is education.
Governor, speaking of issues, Al Gore has said that in Texas, where you're governor, that among women with health care, Texas ranks number 49. Children with health insurance ranks number 50. Is that true? And what does that tell us about your governorship?
Well, I think you can find all kinds of statistics to make all kinds of cases. I rest most of my case on the fact that people in Texas like the job I have done. In terms of children's health insurance, we're working hard to reach out with an aggressive CHIPS program. It's Children's Health Insurance Program to make sure poor children get enrolled. We're actively involved in signing people up. In terms of women's issues, we've done a good job in the state of Texas. We've got the direct access to OBGYNs. We've got low-income women are able to get free mammograms across the state. Laura's been very actively involved with women's health issues in the state of Texas. I don't know the statistics he's using, but I do know that there's a lot of women who are covered, and if there's work to do, we'll do it in the great state of Texas.
Mrs. Bush, have you
Yes.
talked to Cindy McCain at any time for any length of time?
Well, sure. I've met all the spouses at all the debates. So certainly I've met Cindy McCain.
What did you talk about?
Well, we just talk about the campaign a little bit. We say hello to each other. It's usually right before a debate. I'm sure I'm nervous. I don't know if she is too, but we haven't had a lot of time to visit.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Governor, in the short time we have left, the mainland Chinese have again threatened the Taiwanese.
Yeah.
You favor letting the mainland Chinese into the World Trade Organization. What does that tell us about how you would handle the situation as president and what you would do about human rights in China?
Well, I do favor mainland China coming into the World Trade Organization for two reasons. One, it'll be good when they open up their markets for our American farmers and ranchers and for our entrepreneurs. I also do so because I know when the entrepreneurial class in China gets a taste of freedom, the freedom of the marketplace, the freedom of capitalism, they'll demand other freedoms. When I become the president, I'm going to make it clear to both mainland China and Taiwan that this great country expects there to be a peaceful resolution of any dispute between the two, and that I'm also going to make it clear that our country will help Taiwan defend itself if need be.
After the shooting of the first grader by another first grader in Michigan, President Clinton called for some new ideas on gun control. Now, I know that in the main that you're opposed to gun control. Do you have any new ideas to help solve this problem?
Well, I'm not opposed to laws like instant background checks. I think that makes eminent sense to make sure that people who should not have guns don't get guns. I believe this, Dan, and I've signed a law in Texas that says if a parent is negligent in gun safety and a child gets a gun and that shouldn't have a gun, that the accountability ought to be not only to the parent, to the child, but to the parent as well. I believe we have laws on the books in my state and should have laws on the books around the country that send a clear signal. Illegal uses of guns will carry a stiff penalty.
Governor and First Lady Laura Bush, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
Dan.
Well, this was not a good night for Democrat Bill Bradley. It was not a good campaign. A short time ago, Bill Bradley addressed supporters here in New York after failing to beat Vice President Gore anywhere.
I just called the Vice President to congratulate him on his victories tonight. He won, I lost. And on one level, I agree with Vince Lombardi when he said, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. Tomorrow, I'll consult with supporters around the country to get their thoughts and advice, and I'll make my plans known shortly.
Bill Bradley, speaking from New York. Now, joining me from Nashville, Tennessee, the Vice President of the United States, Al Gore, who scored big today over Bill Bradley. Mr. Vice President, thank you for doing this tonight. Is there too much bad blood between you and Bill Bradley to consider him now for the vice presidential nomination?
Well, there's no bad blood at all, but I'm not drawing up a list of running mates. I just think it's premature and inappropriate. But he's a good friend. I've said throughout this campaign, even as we've debated some policy differences, that I respect him greatly. I think he's a good man. And I think he brought a lot to the campaign, a passion for justice and ending the divisions, especially those based on race.
Mr. Vice President, there seems to be some distance between you and President Clinton. Do you plan to ask the President to join you on the campaign trail?
Sure. I have to win this on my own. But in the fall election, I welcome help from the President and anyone else who can help me.
Mr. Vice President, you've been point man in many ways for the United States relations with what used to be the Soviet Union, now Russia. Your Republican opponents criticize you constantly about that. For what that has gone wrong do you take responsibility?
Well, a lot's gone right. First of all, Dan, they have privatized their economy to an extent that now exceeds some Western European nations. They have just had free and fair elections for their parliament, and they're coming up on what everyone anticipates will be free and fair elections for the next presidential term. They have a vigorous free press, unafraid to criticize the government, the military, the intelligence services. They have acquiesced in the expansion of NATO. Their troops are patrolling side by side with ours in Bosnia and in Kosovo. They still have many problems, but just 11 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, they have made considerable progress toward the consolidation of democracy and free markets. The rest of the decisions, they're going to have to make themselves. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But we have done a lot of good work in getting them to the point where they are.
Mr. Vice President, both of your main Republican opponents and Bill Bradley say that you are vulnerable to the accusations about improprieties in the 1996 fundraising for Gore Clinton. One, do you agree? Two, how are you going to fight that?
Well, I don't think the question is whether we've made mistakes. Both parties made mistakes in the 96 campaign. I made mistakes. I've learned from my mistakes. And like John McCain, I bring personal experience to the commitment to fight for campaign finance reform. 3 of the 4 candidates contesting the elections this evening are in favor of campaign finance reform. I want to pass it. If I'm entrusted with the presidency, I will see that it is passed. But we don't have to wait until that law is passed. I will challenge the Republican nominee to ban the so-called soft money and then go further to eliminate all of the 30-second and 60-second radio and TV ads and agree instead to debate twice a week on a different issue each time, every single week as soon as the nominees are chosen until Election Day. This could bring about a revitalization of our democracy. I will conduct open meetings across America, including the first one starting tomorrow night in Michigan, and I'll challenge the Republican nominee to hold joint open meetings and make this a contest of ideas and not insults.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. Congratulations, as I said to Governor Bush, on his wins. Congratulations on yours. We'll be back in a moment with more 60 Minutes, too.
60 Minutes 2 will continue in a moment.